Introduction. Quantum Awakening, Exiting the Material Illusion. Humanity sleepwalks through a low-resolution hologram. What the ordinary man defines as reality, solid matter, financial capital, the architecture of his home, and the limitations of his own biological hardware, represents barely 5% of the visible universe. It is quantum energy vibrating at a humiliatingly slow speed. It is so dense and heavy that it has crystallized into physical form. And yet, the entire biomass pays pathetic cult to this hologram. They react to three-dimensional circumstances as if they were immutable laws, exhausting their vital voltage in a hand-to-hand struggle against a simple thermodynamic reflection. This is their error. This volume is the definitive annihilation of that ignorance. Quantum awakening is not a romantic event of mystical enlightenment. It is not a transient emotional epiphany. True awakening is a cold, mathematical, and aseptic occurrence. It happens in the exact millisecond in which your nervous system empirically understands the truth. Your system understands that matter is not your sovereign, but your employee. It is the absolute realization that the physical space you inhabit, the air you breathe, and the atoms that make up your empire are not fixed entities. They are a unified field of conscious matter waiting for your directional instructions. You are the master. The figure of the sage has been corrupted by centuries of weak philosophy. We have been sold the illusion of a passive ascetic, hidden on a mountain, who tolerates poverty and surrenders to the entropy of the world. The operator of reality repudiates this passivity. The true sage is a master of spiritual thermodynamics. The sage does not flee the three-dimensional ashboard. He hacks it, rewrites it, and subjects it to his will with relentless elegance. By abandoning the material illusion, you stop being a cork swept by the current of probabilities. You become the conscious observer. You understand that your intellect fires the electrical charge. You fire the geometric design of your destiny, and your emotional state sustains the magnetic charge, the gravity that attracts matter. But mastery demands a third pillar, spatial resonance. You understand that your home and office are not inert containers of concrete and glass. They are the motherboard of your spiritual architecture. If you attempt to compile a life of absolute domination, but operate within a physical environment plagued by entropy, disorder, and stagnant frequencies, your will crash against a wall of acoustic friction. On this path, mysticism merges with particle physics. You will learn to calibrate your three-dimensional habitat. You will calibrate it to function like a particle accelerator, a superconductor that amplifies your intention to infinity instead of draining your quantum bandwidth. You have crossed the threshold into the control room of the cosmos. From this line forward, biological victimhood is uninstalled forever. You are now the primary user. You are about to master the source code of creation, integrating the deep aesthetics of space with undeniable physical results, forging your absolute sovereignty over the matrix. The universe is no longer a mystery you must endure. It is a mechanism you are going to operate. The age of passive endurance has finally come to an end. Chapter 1. The Thermodynamics of the Ego, Dissipating the Friction of Identity. The first law, the conservation of vital energy. To master the three-dimensional hologram and alter the structure of your reality, you must first submit to the most non-negotiable law of universal physics, thermodynamics. The first law of this science dictates that energy is neither created nor destroyed, only transformed. In your hidden anatomy, you possess a finite amount of voltage. This is your vital force, the raw material with which you collapse quantum probability waves to forge wealth, power, and geometric harmony. The greatest failure of the ordinary man does not lie in his inability to generate energy, but in his absolute ignorance of how he dissipates it. He is a leaking battery in a world of high resistance. Human biomass operates under the illusion that the ego is simply a personality trait, a misunderstood pride, or an excess of confidence. In the physics of the unified field, the ego is not a psychological concept. It is a massive thermal leak. It is an open wound in your electromagnetic field through which vital energy bleeds out. The ego is the biological need to maintain a solid, rigid, and predictable identity. It is the primitive instinct to say, I am this, I suffer for this, I deserve to be right. Maintaining this illusory structure alive requires a monstrous caloric and vibratory consumption. If you spend your day defending your self-importance, you fail. You are burning the quantum fuel that you should be using to materialize your empire. You are reacting to the offenses of the outside world or trying to convince entropy that you have value. This is the thermal dissipation of your sovereign potential. The sage understands that every reaction is a loss of internal pressure. The friction of defense, the heat of wear. In classical mechanics, when two rough surfaces rub against each other, the movement generates friction. Friction produces heat, and that heat is kinetic energy lost to the atmosphere, making the system inefficient. The ego is the roughest surface in the universe. It seeks to touch everything only to resist its own movement. Every time you feel the need to win an inconsequential argument, every time you take offense because the 3D illusion does not recognize your status, you are generating friction. You are colliding against the inert matter of the world. In that collision, you emit radiation in the form of anger, frustration, or resentment. Radiation is dissipated heat. You become an emotional radiator, heating the vacuum around you without producing any useful physical work. The sage, the true architect of the inner cosmos, observes this dynamic with aseptic and cold contempt. He understands that external validation is the consolation prize for hollow organisms. The pragmatic operator does not argue with the hologram. If someone attacks him, or if a circumstance challenges him, he does not offer frontal resistance. Resistance solidifies the problem. Instead, the sage withdraws his identity from the equation. He becomes translucent. By not offering a solid surface, friction drops to zero. The attack passes through his auric field without altering his internal temperature. This is maximum thermodynamic efficiency, conserving every joule of vital energy in the core, reserving it exclusively for the collapse of his own cosmic goals. He is a superconductor of circumstances, never absorbing the heat of the conflict. Entropy and personal history, the anchor of the past. The second law of thermodynamics warns us that every closed system inevitably tends toward chaos and disorder, a concept known as entropy. At a spiritual level, the ego is the supreme agent of entropy. It seeks chaos, drama, and complication because it needs the storm to justify its existence and its defensive stance. An ego cannot survive in the geometric silence of the void. It needs the noise of three-dimensional conflict. The primary tool used by the ego to generate this chaos is your personal history. The biological mind clings obsessively to its past. It defines itself by its traumas, its childhood lack, and its financial failures. The gaseous man walks through the world dragging an electromagnetic corpse, constantly emitting the frequency of what was. In quantum physics, the universe can only respond to the vibratory signature you emit in the eternal now. If your signature is contaminated by victimhood, the field returns more of the same. To walk the path of the sage, you must commit an act of quantum annihilation. You must erase your personal history. You must destroy the museum of your tragedies. The sage understands that the past is a dead frequency, the light of extinct stars that no longer has mass or power, unless you decide to inject your consciousness. By dissolving the narrative of who you were, you become a blank sheet, a field of pure potentiality where matter can organize in infinitely higher configurations. You cease to be a predictable chemical reaction and become a free variable in the universal equation. Silence is the death of entropy and the birth of design. Superfluidity and the aesthetics of immobility. When you manage to stop the thermal leak of personal defense and cut the anchors of your past history, your vibratory field experiences a change of state. You go from being rigid matter to becoming a superfluid. In physics, a superfluid is a substance cooled to a point where it loses all viscosity and resistance. It can pass through porous matter without losing speed. In inner alchemy, superfluidity is the state of consciousness where the individual flows through the obstacles of the 3D world without getting stuck in the friction of suffering. Here, the elegance of the spirit merges with absolute power and cold precision. There is a deep, almost mathematical aesthetics in the mind that does not react. Imagine a perfectly still pond. That is charged immobility. When the outside world throws a stone, a crisis, an attack, the ordinary man agitates the water violently, destroying the reflection of the cosmos. The water becomes murky. The sage absorbs the impact. He allows the concentric wave to expand and dissipate, but his depth remains unchanged. This immobility is not weakness. It is the visible manifestation of quantum order. Cultivating this spatial and mental elegance tunes you to the most sublime laws. It is the mastery of the void. The beauty of non-reaction is the language of sacred geometry applied to human behavior. He who masters this aesthetics becomes invulnerable, because he has understood that true authority over the external world is born from absolute sovereignty over the internal world. He is the unmoved mover in the center of the storm, the black hole of the self acquiring gravitational mass. By eradicating the ego, a terrifying and majestic thermodynamic paradox occurs. By ceasing to try to be someone in the stage of society, by abandoning the need to shout your name for the biomass to recognize you, your energy stops expanding outward and collapses inward. It gains a terrifying density. In astrophysics, when a massive star exhausts its nuclear fuel, it can no longer sustain outward pressure. It collapses under its own weight, concentrating all its matter into an infinitely small and dense point. It becomes a singularity. It becomes a black hole. Its gravity becomes so immense that it alters space-time. The ego makes you light, dispersed, and gaseous. The dissolution of the ego makes you infinitely dense. When you stop projecting your identity toward the world and settle in the silent void of your being, your spiritual gravitational mass multiplies. The physical universe detects this new density and curves toward you. It is in this state of no self where true pragmatic materialization occurs. Capital, alliances, influence, and perfect health begin to be sucked toward your center of gravity. You do not have to hunt these realities with the sweat of biological instinct. You simply install yourself in the cold and perfect geometry. You observe how the three-dimensional hologram reorganizes to pay tribute to the new singularity born within it. You are the attractor, the fixed point around which the chaos of the world organizes into a symphony of order and abundance. You no longer seek. You are the destination of every flow in your field. The edge of the observer, cutting the illusion. Dissipating the friction of identity is the first rite of passage. It demands a self-discipline that borders on cruelty. You must watch the microscopic movements of your own mind. Every time you feel the thermal impulse to justify yourself or complain, you must apply the sharp edge of the conscious observer. You cut the electrical supply to that thought instantly. You refuse to finance entropy with the currency of your attention. Your identity is no longer a physical body, a name, or a profession. Your identity has transmuted into the pure consciousness that sustains the fabric of space and its inherent resonance. You have become the designer of universal acoustics, preparing the physical and vibratory ground to collapse the most majestic probabilities of the unified field. Friction has been annihilated. The motor is cold, silent, and operating at 100% efficiency. You are ready to mold matter with a thought. The kinetic potential of the void. The space you have cleared by removing the ego is not empty in the traditional sense. It is a vacuum of high potential energy. In quantum field theory, the vacuum is not a lack of something, but a sea of zero-point energy waiting for a fluctuation. By becoming nothing in the social sense, you become everything. The ordinary man is so full of himself that there is no room for the universe to act through him. He is like a vessel full of sand trying to catch the rain. The sage is an empty vessel, but his walls are made of the most resilient geometry. He allows the totality of the field to flow through his structure. This is the secret of spontaneous action. When you do not have an identity to protect, you can act with the precision of a lightning bolt. There is no hesitation, no second-guessing, and no fear of failure. Failure is only possible for someone who has an image to maintain. For the void, there is only experience. The thermal equilibrium of mastery. Mastery is the ability to maintain thermal equilibrium regardless of the environment. If the world is in a state of high entropy, war, economic collapse, or social unrest, the operator remains at his constant operating temperature. He does not allow the external heat to increase his internal vibration. This isolation is achieved through the correct calibration of the inner space. By using the principles of Dimension Feng, you organize your physical habitat to mirror your internal order. Your environment becomes an extension of your superconductor state. It reinforces your lack of friction and your density. As you advance, you realize that the external world is simply a slower version of your mind. If you are cold and still inside, the world eventually reflects that stillness. If you are agitated and seeking validation, the world provides noise and resistance. The thermodynamics of the ego dictate the temperature of your life. The final collapse of resistance. In the final stage of this process, even the idea of practicing disappears. You no longer have to consciously stop the ego. The ego has simply been outshone by the radiance of your true nature. You operate in a state of flow, where every action is perfectly timed and every word carries the weight of a mountain. The friction of the world becomes a tool rather than an obstacle. You use the resistance of others as a fulcrum to amplify your own movement, just as a sailor uses a headwind to move forward through tacking. You have mastered the art of biological and spiritual leverage. You are the sovereign of the field. The hologram now recognizes you as its administrator. You have ceased to be a prisoner of the laws of physics and have become their architect. The three-dimensional board is yours to command, and every move you make is a masterpiece of energy conservation and creative collapse. The path is clear. Chapter 3. Sacred Geometry of the Environment. The Sage's Feng Shui. The illusion of empty space, the three-dimensional hard drive. The ordinary man walks through his home and office with absolute thermodynamic blindness. He perceives walls, furniture, and hallways as inert matter, dead objects simply occupying a place in three-dimensional geometry. They believe the space between those objects is empty. This is one of the most lethal fallacies for the reality operator. In quantum physics, the vacuum does not exist. What you perceive as empty space is, in reality, a boiling ocean of subatomic energy, an electromagnetic lattice that records, stores, and amplifies every thought and emotion you emit. Your physical environment is not a mere container for your biological body. It is the external hard drive of your consciousness. It is an acoustic extension of your own mind. When human biomass attempts to manifest a new reality, they meditate for 20 minutes, trying to raise their frequency. But then, they open their eyes, and their biological body remains immersed in an environment saturated with chaos, broken objects, dust, and dark corners. This is a fatal error. The vital energy, QI, that should be flowing like a superconductor to collapse your quantum desires crashes against this physical friction. The signal degrades. The sage understands that trying to run absolute domination software on spatial hardware full of entropy is cosmic suicide. Your environment is your motherboard. If the circuits of your room are cut or rusted by disorder, your will never reach the master server of the universe. You are broadcasting a high-definition signal through a broken antenna. Mastery requires that the space around you vibrates in perfect phase with the vision within you. Spatial entropy, the thermal leak of disorder. The second law of thermodynamics dictates that every closed system tends toward chaos. In your physical habitat, this chaos manifests as disorder, unnecessary accumulation, and asymmetry. Each object you possess is anchored to your electromagnetic field through a thread of quantum information. Stacked papers of past debts, clothes you no longer wear, furniture blocking the path. All these elements are not simple visual nuisances. They are nodes of friction. They emit a low, dense frequency that constantly clashes against your aura. When you walk through a cluttered room, your biological brain must process this. Your energetic field has to unconsciously dodge all that residual information. This generates a massive thermal leak. You are dissipating megawatts of vital energy simply to exist within your own house. The sage's feng shui is not interior decoration. It is the relentless eradication of aerodynamic resistance. The first mandate of sacred geometry is the purge. The aseptic operator destroys, gives away, or incinerates any atom of matter in his home that does not resonate with the vibration of his future empire. By emptying the space of entropy, you stop the energy leak. You silence the background noise. You transform your house from a friction dump into an anechoic chamber, where the only sound that reverberates is the pure frequency of your intention. Every cleared corner is a recovered vault for your manifestation. The void you create is the fertile ground where the matter of your new destiny will finally take root. The architecture of the ether, aesthetics as an equation of the soul. Once entropy has been annihilated, the sage operates matter from a deeply philosophical and visual front. He understands that elegance is not a superficial luxury reserved for society, but a requirement of the physics of the universe. Spatial beauty is the visible manifestation of quantum order. When a space is designed under the principles of the golden ratio, elemental balance, and intentional minimalism, it does not just look good. It is vibrating at a harmonic frequency that resonates directly with the fabric of the ether. This is the architecture of the vacuum. It is a biological imperative for power. A sophisticated, clean, and geometrically perfect environment seduces the central nervous system, inducing alpha and theta brainwaves without effort. By surrounding yourself with intentional art, symmetry, and calculated voids, you are dictating to conscious matter that you operate at the frequency of perfection. The sophistication of your environment acts as a tuning fork. Every time you enter your living room or workspace, the impeccable acoustics of the room recalibrate your biology. It reminds you of your cosmic lineage and extirpates any trace of vulgarity or lack that you may have absorbed from the outside world. The gravitational well, the mechanics of materialization. While aesthetics tune the soul's vibration, the strategic arrangement of the environment executes an implacable mechanics of results. The sage is not content with living in a peaceful museum. His space must be a tactical weapon. The universe is a network of thermodynamic exchange. Capital and influence are dense energy. Wealth and structural opportunities seek the path of least resistance. In the world of scarcity, biomass pursues this energy, exhausting their own physical bodies. The architect of the inner cosmos inverts the paradigm. He molds the matter of his environment to create a gravitational well. By applying advanced feng shui principles, you align your command desk in the power position, facing the entry, backed by the solidity of a wall. You activate the directional sectors corresponding to expansion and eliminate any poisoned arrows, sharp geometry pointing at you. You are building an electromagnetic funnel. Your office ceases to be a simple room and mutates into a particle accelerator designed specifically to collapse the wave of wealth. The arrangement of furniture and the direction of light and airflow dictate how the dark matter around you behaves. By eliminating physical friction, capital is sucked toward you. Success follows the laws of cosmic gravity that you yourself have programmed into the architecture of your space. You do not go to the world. You command the world to converge at your coordinates. The environment becomes the magnet that performs the heavy lifting of materialization while you remain in stillness. The secondary observer, the environment as a quantum anchor. Even the most disciplined operator inhabits a biological body subject to thermal fluctuations. There will be days when doubt tries to infiltrate, milliseconds where the observer effect of your mind wavers under the pressure of the hologram. Here, the sacred geometry of your environment fulfills its most sublime function. Your house becomes your secondary observer. If your biological mind forgets its power for an instant, your physical environment, perfectly calibrated and curated, does not forget. The walls, the immaculate order, the strategically placed symbols of power, and the fluidity of the space continue holding the vibration. The matter of your home observes abundance for you when you are tired. The physical space becomes a massive quantum anchor that prevents your reality from resetting toward failure. You have delegated part of your processing load to the inert matter surrounding you, which now breathes and pulses for you. It sustains the structure of your empire in the background, 24 hours a day. You have built a fortress that maintains the collapse of your desired probability even when your conscious focus is elsewhere. This is the ultimate synergy between mind and matter, an environment that refuses to let you be small. Spatial superconductivity. The mastery of the sage's feng shui culminates in a state of physical superconductivity. When your home and your mind operate at the exact same frequency, the membrane separating the inner world from the outer world dissolves. You have entered a new geometric dimension. You no longer have to adapt to space. Nor does space impose its heaviness upon you. You walk through your physical domains, and vital energy passes through you without finding a single ohm of resistance. You have become the core of a closed and perfect system, where every molecule of oxygen is conjured to accelerate your three-dimensional will. Every square centimeter of matter is programmed to expand your sovereignty over the ashboard. In this state, your environment is no longer a place where you live, but a tool through which you rule. The architecture of your home is the physical signature of your enlightened soul crystallized in the hologram. The thermal equilibrium of high command. A space in thermal equilibrium with the sage's will is a space where entropy cannot take root. When you eliminate the heat of disorder, you create a cooling effect that allows for the superconductivity of your intention. In this chilled, precise environment, your thoughts move with zero latency. The ordinary home is a high-heat environment full of the friction of unclosed cycles and broken objects. The sage's home is a sanctuary of cold precision. This lack of friction allows your electromagnetic torus to expand without interference, filling the entire volume of your property with your unique frequency. This expansion means that anyone who enters your space is instantly subjected to your reality collapse. They enter your gravitational well and, consciously or not, begin to play by your rules. Your environment becomes a field of influence that precedes your words, preparing the matter of the world to follow your lead. The resonance of the void. The most powerful tool in the architecture of the ether is the intentional void. Most people fear empty space and try to fill it with noise or objects. The sage understands that the void is the conductor of the spirit. A room with calculated empty space allows the chi to accelerate and spiral, creating a vortex. This vortex acts as a vacuum for the probabilities you wish to attract. By leaving room for the unseen, you provide the field with the space it needs to manifest new forms of wealth and health. The void is not a lack, it is a placeholder for your future power. It is the silence between notes that creates music. When you master the resonance of the void, your home feels vast regardless of its physical dimensions. This vastness is the physical reflection of your expanded consciousness. You are no longer confined by walls, you are supported by them. Your space becomes a launching pad for the infinite, rooted in 3D. The ritual of the gatekeeper. Maintaining this level of superconductivity requires the discipline of the gatekeeper. You must be the immune system of your environment. No object, person, or piece of information enters your space without passing your frequential audit. If a gift carries the vibration of obligation or guilt, it is rejected. If a guest carries the frequency of victimhood or chaos, they are barred from your inner sanctum. You protect the motherboard of your empire with a cold mathematical detachment. This is not about social etiquette, it is about protecting the integrity of your quantum hardware. You are the architect. By guarding the gates, you ensure that your secondary observer remains pure. Your environment remains a pristine mirror of your highest self, reflecting back to you only the images of power and grace that you have chosen to manifest. This is the sovereign way to inhabit the three-dimensional hologram, the synthesis of the plume and the stone. Finally, your feng shui becomes a synthesis of the lightest thought, the plume, and the densest matter, the stone. You use your mind to design the frequency and your environment to anchor the form. This marriage of spirit and matter creates a stable reality that the fluctuations of the world cannot touch. You sit in the center of your calibrated empire, observing the ashboard from a position of absolute geometric advantage. The game is no longer about struggle. It is about the elegant deployment of your will. Your space is your scepter. Your order is your crown. The hologram has no choice but to obey. The path of the sage is the path of the one who knows that his home is the center of the universe. From this center, you command the elements. You command the light. You command the very fabric of your destiny. The architecture is complete. The engine is running. Your sovereignty is absolute. Chapter 3. Sacred Geometry of the Environment. The Sage's Feng Shui. The illusion of empty space, the three-dimensional hard drive. The ordinary man walks through his home and office with absolute thermodynamic blindness. He perceives walls, furniture, and hallways as inert matter, dead objects simply occupying a place in three-dimensional geometry. They believe the space between those objects is empty. This is one of the most lethal fallacies for the reality operator. In quantum physics, the vacuum does not exist. What you perceive as empty space is, in reality, a boiling ocean of subatomic energy, an electromagnetic lattice that records, stores, and amplifies every thought and emotion you emit. Your physical environment is not a mere container for your biological body. It is the external hard drive of your consciousness. It is an acoustic extension of your own mind. When human biomass attempts to manifest a new reality, they meditate for 20 minutes, trying to raise their frequency. But then, they open their eyes, and their biological body remains immersed in an environment saturated with chaos, broken objects, dust, and dark corners. This is a fatal error. The vital energy, QI, that should be flowing like a superconductor to collapse your quantum desires crashes against this physical friction. The signal degrades. The sage understands that trying to run absolute domination software on spatial hardware full of entropy is cosmic suicide. Your environment is your motherboard. If the circuits of your room are cut or rusted by disorder, your will never reach the master server of the universe. You are broadcasting a high-definition signal through a broken antenna. Mastery requires that the space around you vibrates in perfect phase with the vision within you. Spatial entropy, the thermal leak of disorder. The second law of thermodynamics dictates that every closed system tends toward chaos. In your physical habitat, this chaos manifests as disorder, unnecessary accumulation, and asymmetry. Each object you possess is anchored to your electromagnetic field through a thread of quantum information. Stacked papers of past debts, clothes you no longer wear, furniture blocking the path. All these elements are not simple visual nuisances. They are nodes of friction. They emit a low, dense frequency that constantly clashes against your aura. When you walk through a cluttered room, your biological brain must process this. Your energetic field has to unconsciously dodge all that residual information. This generates a massive thermal leak. You are dissipating megawatts of vital energy simply to exist within your own house. The sage's feng shui is not interior decoration. It is the relentless eradication of aerodynamic resistance. The first mandate of sacred geometry is the purge. The aseptic operator destroys, gives away, or incinerates any atom of matter in his home that does not resonate with the vibration of his future empire. By emptying the space of entropy, you stop the energy leak. You silence the background noise. You transform your house from a friction dump into an anechoic chamber, where the only sound that reverberates is the pure frequency of your intention. Every cleared corner is a recovered vault for your manifestation. The void you create is the fertile ground where the matter of your new destiny will finally take root. The architecture of the ether, aesthetics as an equation of the soul. Once entropy has been annihilated, the sage operates matter from a deeply philosophical and visual front. He understands that elegance is not a superficial luxury reserved for society, but a requirement of the physics of the universe. Spatial beauty is the visible manifestation of quantum order. When a space is designed under the principles of the golden ratio, elemental balance, and intentional minimalism, it does not just look good. It is vibrating at a harmonic frequency that resonates directly with the fabric of the ether. This is the architecture of the vacuum. It is a biological imperative for power. A sophisticated, clean, and geometrically perfect environment seduces the central nervous system, inducing alpha and theta brainwaves without effort. By surrounding yourself with intentional art, symmetry, and calculated voids, you are dictating to conscious matter that you operate at the frequency of perfection. The sophistication of your environment acts as a tuning fork. Every time you enter your living room or workspace, the impeccable acoustics of the room recalibrate your biology. It reminds you of your cosmic lineage and extirpates any trace of vulgarity or lack that you may have absorbed from the outside world. The gravitational well, the mechanics of materialization. While aesthetics tune the soul's vibration, the strategic arrangement of the environment executes an implacable mechanics of results. The sage is not content with living in a peaceful museum. His space must be a tactical weapon. The universe is a network of thermodynamic exchange. Capital and influence are dense energy. Wealth and structural opportunities seek the path of least resistance. In the world of scarcity, biomass pursues this energy, exhausting their own physical bodies. The architect of the inner cosmos inverts the paradigm. He molds the matter of his environment to create a gravitational well. By applying advanced feng shui principles, you align your command desk in the power position, facing the entry, backed by the solidity of a wall. You activate the directional sectors corresponding to expansion and eliminate any poisoned arrows, sharp geometry pointing at you. You are building an electromagnetic funnel. Your office ceases to be a simple room and mutates into a particle accelerator designed specifically to collapse the wave of wealth. The arrangement of furniture and the direction of light and airflow dictate how the dark matter around you behaves. By eliminating physical friction, capital is sucked toward you. Success follows the laws of cosmic gravity that you yourself have programmed into the architecture of your space. You do not go to the world. You command the world to converge at your coordinates. The environment becomes the magnet that performs the heavy lifting of materialization while you remain in stillness. The secondary observer, the environment as a quantum anchor. Even the most disciplined operator inhabits a biological body subject to thermal fluctuations. There will be days when doubt tries to infiltrate, milliseconds where the observer effect of your mind wavers under the pressure of the hologram. Here, the sacred geometry of your environment fulfills its most sublime function. Your house becomes your secondary observer. If your biological mind forgets its power for an instant, your physical environment, perfectly calibrated and curated, does not forget. The walls, the immaculate order, the strategically placed symbols of power, and the fluidity of the space continue holding the vibration. The matter of your home observes abundance for you when you are tired. The physical space becomes a massive quantum anchor that prevents your reality from resetting toward failure. You have delegated part of your processing load to the inert matter surrounding you, which now breathes and pulses for you. It sustains the structure of your empire in the background, 24 hours a day. You have built a fortress that maintains the collapse of your desired probability even when your conscious focus is elsewhere. This is the ultimate synergy between mind and matter, an environment that refuses to let you be small. Spatial superconductivity. The mastery of the sage's feng shui culminates in a state of physical superconductivity. When your home and your mind operate at the exact same frequency, the membrane separating the inner world from the outer world dissolves. You have entered a new geometric dimension. You no longer have to adapt to space. Nor does space impose its heaviness upon you. You walk through your physical domains, and vital energy passes through you without finding a single ohm of resistance. You have become the core of a closed and perfect system, where every molecule of oxygen is conjured to accelerate your three-dimensional will. Every square centimeter of matter is programmed to expand your sovereignty over the ashboard. In this state, your environment is no longer a place where you live, but a tool through which you rule. The architecture of your home is the physical signature of your enlightened soul crystallized in the hologram. The thermal equilibrium of high command. A space in thermal equilibrium with the sage's will is a space where entropy cannot take root. When you eliminate the heat of disorder, you create a cooling effect that allows for the superconductivity of your intention. In this chilled, precise environment, your thoughts move with zero latency. The ordinary home is a high-heat environment full of the friction of unclosed cycles and broken objects. The sage's home is a sanctuary of cold precision. This lack of friction allows your electromagnetic torus to expand without interference, filling the entire volume of your property with your unique frequency. This expansion means that anyone who enters your space is instantly subjected to your reality collapse. They enter your gravitational well and, consciously or not, begin to play by your rules. Your environment becomes a field of influence that precedes your words, preparing the matter of the world to follow your lead. The resonance of the void. The most powerful tool in the architecture of the ether is the intentional void. Most people fear empty space and try to fill it with noise or objects. The sage understands that the void is the conductor of the spirit. A room with calculated empty space allows the chi to accelerate and spiral, creating a vortex. This vortex acts as a vacuum for the probabilities you wish to attract. By leaving room for the unseen, you provide the field with the space it needs to manifest new forms of wealth and health. The void is not a lack, it is a placeholder for your future power. It is the silence between notes that creates music. When you master the resonance of the void, your home feels vast regardless of its physical dimensions. This vastness is the physical reflection of your expanded consciousness. You are no longer confined by walls, you are supported by them. Your space becomes a launching pad for the infinite, rooted in 3D. The ritual of the gatekeeper. Maintaining this level of superconductivity requires the discipline of the gatekeeper. You must be the immune system of your environment. No object, person, or piece of information enters your space without passing your frequential audit. If a gift carries the vibration of obligation or guilt, it is rejected. If a guest carries the frequency of victimhood or chaos, they are barred from your inner sanctum. You protect the motherboard of your empire with a cold mathematical detachment. This is not about social etiquette, it is about protecting the integrity of your quantum hardware. You are the architect. By guarding the gates, you ensure that your secondary observer remains pure. Your environment remains a pristine mirror of your highest self, reflecting back to you only the images of power and grace that you have chosen to manifest. This is the sovereign way to inhabit the three-dimensional hologram, the synthesis of the plume and the stone. Finally, your feng shui becomes a synthesis of the lightest thought, the plume, and the densest matter, the stone. You use your mind to design the frequency and your environment to anchor the form. This marriage of spirit and matter creates a stable reality that the fluctuations of the world cannot touch. You sit in the center of your calibrated empire, observing the ashboard from a position of absolute geometric advantage. The game is no longer about struggle. It is about the elegant deployment of your will. Your space is your scepter. Your order is your crown. The hologram has no choice but to obey. The path of the sage is the path of the one who knows that his home is the center of the universe. From this center, you command the elements. You command the light. You command the very fabric of your destiny. The architecture is complete. The engine is running. Your sovereignty is absolute. Chapter 4. Morphic Resonance, Disconnecting from the Collective Egregore. The invisible network, the weight of collective memory. The universe is not a collection of isolated objects floating in a vacuum. It is a continuous fabric of interconnected information. In quantum biology, the theory of morphic resonance establishes that nature's forms and species' behaviors are not inherited solely through physical genetics, but through invisible memory fields. When a sufficient number of individuals of a species learns a behavior, a morphic field is created. From that moment on, the rest of the species can access that knowledge almost instantaneously, regardless of spatial distance, because all are tuned to the same frequency. This is a majestic physical law but a thermodynamic sentence. Humanity, as a species, has created a colossal morphic field. But the biomass, the visible 5% operating in fear and survival, has not fed this field with frequencies of power, abundance, or expansion. They have saturated it for millennia with the vibration of scarcity, victimhood, disease, and collective hysteria. It is a toxic ocean. When you walk down the street, when you observe the three-dimensional world, you are not just interacting with physical bodies, you are submerged in this dense electromagnetic sea. The memory of collective failure exerts a crushing atmospheric pressure on your auric field. If you are unaware, it drags you to mediocrity. The egregore, the thermodynamic parasite. In ancient mysticism, when a group of people concentrates their thought and emotion on the same idea for a prolonged time, they engender an autonomous energetic entity called an egregore. An egregore is a living electromagnetic structure born from the hive mind. It has no physical body, but possesses immense gravity and instinct. The modern world is governed by low-frequency egregores, the economic crisis egregore, the political panic egregore, the social resentment egregore. These entities feed on a single source of energy, your attention. When you turn on a news report and feel fear, you have just injected volts of vital energy into the panic. When you join a conversation with mediocre people to complain about the lack of opportunities, you are synchronizing your electrons with the scarcity egregore. The sage understands that yielding attention to 3D drama is not empathy or being informed. It is an act of thermodynamic suicide. You are feeding a quantum parasite. Empathy, as understood by the biomass, is a corrupt code. Feeling the pain of the world does not heal the world. It simply duplicates the amount of suffering in the electromagnetic spectrum. To the operator, the only moral path is the preservation of his own voltage to serve as a beacon of high-frequency order and power. Resonant friction, the danger of acoustic sympathy. To understand how the egregore infects you, observe acoustic physics. If you place two tuning forks in the same room and strike one to vibrate at a specific frequency, the second fork, even if untouched, will spontaneously begin to vibrate at the same note. This is known as sympathetic resonance. It is a law of nature. Your nervous system, your heart, and your brain act as a biological tuning fork. If you spend your time surrounded by organisms vibrating at the frequency of complaint, defeat, or cynicism, their magnetic field will clash against yours. At first, you will try to resist, but eventually, the law of resonance will submit you. Your cells will be forced to alter their oscillation to match the dominant vibration of the environment. Suddenly, you feel tired. Your great ambitions seem impossible. The aseptic certainty you had in the morning has evaporated. You failed because you violated the physics of isolation and allowed resonant friction to dim you. The spiritual Faraday cage, cutting the cords. In electromagnetic engineering, a Faraday cage is a metallic enclosure that blocks static electric fields and cancels external radiation. No radio signal or electromagnetic pulse can penetrate its interior. For the object inside the cage, the chaos of the outer spectrum simply does not exist. It is a state of absolute silence. The path of the sage demands the immediate construction of a spiritual Faraday cage. You must disconnect from the collective egregore. This disconnection does not require moving to an isolated cave. Physical separation is irrelevant if your mind remains tied to the noise. True disconnection is vibratory and cold. It is executed through aseptic indifference. The sage walks in the city, operates in markets, and crosses the biomass daily, but he is armored. When the crowd panics, the sage does not react. He emits not a single joule of emotional energy toward the drama. He cuts the magnetic cords of social validation forever. He no longer cares to be understood by the crowd, nor needs the visible 5% to approve of his moves. By applying this cold, calculated indifference, you cut the egregore's power supply. Since your auric field no longer emits the frequency of fear, collective hysteria bounces off your surface without penetrating. The silence of frequency, immunity to background noise, disconnecting from the hive mind requires a relentless purge of information channels. The sage is an absolute tyrant regarding what he observes and hears. If a conversation or an environment is not mathematically aligned with the expansion of his empire or spirit, the sage eliminates it from his field in milliseconds. He does not debate with mediocrity. He does not try to convince the biomass they are wrong. That would generate thermal friction and re-entangle him with the egregore. He simply applies the silence of frequency. By ceasing to resonate with the lower world ceases to exist in his reality. The catastrophic circumstances sinking society do not touch him because he no longer shares the same vibratory space-time as the mass. He exists in a parallel state of superconductivity where his internal acoustics are governed only by his own design. He is a sovereign frequency inhabitant in a noisy world. The new center of gravity, becoming the origin, the final goal of disconnecting from collective morphic resonance is not to float passively in a lonely void. The goal is a structural transmutation. When you free yourself from the stifling gravity of the egregore, your own vital energy, once drained by the world, begins to accumulate in your core. You densify. Your internal voltage rises to terrifying levels. Isolated in your Faraday cage, energy does not dissipate, it condenses. there comes a critical thermodynamic point where your electromagnetic field becomes so massive, so dense, and so pure that the dynamics reverse. You become the attractor in the system. You are no longer the one at risk of being dragged by society's frequency. You become your own morphic field. You become the center of gravity. When you interact with outer reality, your vibration is so non-negotiable and heavy that matter and people around you suffer sympathetic resonance toward you. You impose the frequency. The biomass entering your orbit is forced to rise, to order itself, and to obey the geometry of your will, not through manipulation, but because the physics of the universe dictates that the weaker wave always yields to the stronger oscillation. You are the sovereign architect. The dynamics of frequential isolation. To achieve this state of high-density sovereign resonance, one must master the art of tactical isolation. Most humans are terrified of silence because in silence, the lack of an internal program becomes apparent. The sage, however, uses silence as a vacuum to draw in the power of the zero-point field. Isolation is not just being alone. It is the refusal to synchronize with any signal that does not originate from your own higher intent. When you achieve this, your biological hardware begins to run a different operating system. Your DNA stops reacting to environmental stresses and starts manifesting the blueprint. This is the secret of the elite. They do not share the same morphic field as the general population. They have built their own enclosures where the rules of the biomass do not apply. By entering your Faraday cage, you are essentially stepping out of the human timeline and into your own divine chronology, eradicating the parasitic hook. Every time you feel the urge to check the news or see what others are thinking, that is the parasitic hook of the egregore trying to re-establish a connection. It is a biological addiction to high cortisol stimulation. You must view these impulses as foreign viruses attempting to breach your firewall. The sage treats his attention as his only currency. He does not spend it on the outrages of the day. He knows that every click, every scroll, and every reaction is a direct transfer of wealth to the collective parasite. By denying the egregore your attention, you are literally starving it out of your reality. As the parasite starves, the clarity of your own internal voice increases. You no longer hear the static of social expectations. You hear the crisp, mathematical instructions of your own sovereign mind. This is the transition from being a reactor to being an actor, from a slave to a commander of the field. The mass of the conscious observer. As you accumulate energy within your isolated core, you acquire what is known as spiritual mass. In the quantum world, mass is not just weight. It is the ability to influence the curvature of the probability field. A person with high spiritual mass can walk into a chaotic situation and simply be, causing it to settle. This is the ultimate expression of morphic resonance. You are not fighting the world, you are out-vibrating it. The obstacles that used to stop you simply dissolve because their frequency cannot exist in the presence of yours. You have become a living singularity, a point of infinite potential that bends the matrix. The people around you will begin to notice a shift. They may feel intimidated or suddenly inspired. This is not due to your words, but to the sheer pressure of your Faraday armored field. You are projecting a reality that is more stable and coherent than theirs, and by the laws of physics, their reality must conform. Building the sovereign empire. Your imperial expansion begins at the edge of your auric field. As you stabilize your new frequency, you begin to project this order onto your immediate environment. Your dimension Feng is the first layer of your empire. Your financial structures are the second. Your social influence is the third. None of these can be built on a foundation of collective resonance. They must be forged in the fire of your own morphic field. You are creating a reality bubble where only your laws apply. Within this bubble, the economic cycles of the biomass are irrelevant. Your wealth grows by your own thermodynamic rules. This is the sovereign state. It is the realization that you are not a part of the world. The world is a part of you. By mastering morphic resonance, you have reclaimed the power to be the origin of every cause in your life. You have disconnected from the ghost of the past and the fear of the future. The final disconnection. The final step is the realization that the collective egregore was only a mirror of your own internal fragmentation. By disconnecting from it, you have actually reconnected with the totality of your own being. The net you once feared is now the tool you use to cast your will across the ocean of matter. You stand as a monumental figure of light, unaffected by the storms of the biomass. Your frequency is a solid wall of gold. Your intention is a lightning bolt. You are the architect of the field, and the field has finally learned to bow to its master. Disconnection is the beginning of true dominion. The hologram is now your playground. The rules of the crowd have been deleted from your memory. You are free, powerful, and absolute in your singularity. The path of the sage has led you to the throne of your own reality, where you reign as the sole source of the frequency that defines your existence. Chapter 5. The Biology of Transmutation, Epigenetics of Enlightenment. Obsolete hardware, the carbon trap. The greatest miscalculation made by the average spiritual seeker is attempting to anchor the vastness of the unified field into a biological body that is terrified. Human biomass reads esoteric texts, visualizes empires, and recites decrees of power, but its central nervous system continues to operate under the programming code of a cornered mammal. Enlightenment, massive wealth, or absolute sovereignty are not simple philosophical concepts. They are currents of extremely high electromagnetic voltage. If you attempt to inject 1,000,000 volts of quantum energy into oxidized copper wiring designed for 12 volts, your stressed physical body, the system does not light up. The system melts. The ordinary man fails in materialization because his biology rejects the future. His cells are addicted to the chemistry of survival, cortisol and adrenaline. They have spent so many decades rehearsing fear, debt, resentment, and lack that the receptors of their cell membranes have become insensitive to any other frequency. When the universe tries to download victory, the biological body enters thermal panic, throws an incompatibility error, and sabotages the manifestation to return to its basal state of known suffering. To walk the path of the sage, intellect is not enough. You must subdue your anatomy. You must transmute your carbon hardware. You must become a superconductor capable of tolerating the thermodynamic violence of creation. You must forge a vessel that does not shatter under the pressure of the infinite. Your task is to upgrade your cellular circuitry so that it can handle the raw power of your own sovereign intentions without catching fire. Epigenetic sovereignty, rewriting the source code. For decades, materialistic science dictated that DNA was an immovable destiny, a sentence written in stone. Epigenetics has destroyed that dogma. Your genes are not your masters. They are simply an immense archive of architectural blueprints. What determines which blueprint is executed and which is archived is the signal. The determination is made by the signal from the environment. For your cells, the most powerful environment is not the external three-dimensional world, but the chemical ecosystem of your own bloodstream. Your thoughts and emotions are not ethereal events floating in the vacuum of your skull. They are physical instructions. When the biological ego reacts to an external crisis with despair, the brain secretes a cascade of low-frequency neuropeptides. This chemistry bathes your cells, crosses the cell membrane, and sends a direct signal to the nucleus. We are under attack. Activate genes of survival, entropy, and degradation. Your body ages. Your body weakens and your electromagnetic field contracts, turning off your ability to alter reality. The sage assumes the throne of epigenetic sovereignty. He understands that enlightenment is the act of sending a new chemical signal to the DNA before the physical event occurs. You lock yourself in your anechoic chamber. You force your nervous system to experience the gratitude, power, and icy immobility of your triumph. By holding this frequency, your brain is forced to release oxytocin, DHEA, and elevated endorphins. This is the biology of transmutation. This new chemistry wraps your cells and rewrites your genetic expression. You are activating the latent codes of longevity, cellular coherence, and high performance. Your physical body ceases to be a record of the past and physically mutates to become a three-dimensional map of your future. You are the biological programmer of your own evolution, choosing which aspects of your lineage to express. The 33-node antenna, tuning the abyss. For the body to become the perfect anchor of your cosmic will, you must understand its true electromagnetic architecture. Your spinal column is not a simple bony support designed to keep you upright against gravity. It is a receiving and emitting antenna of 33 nodes, meticulously designed for the field. It captures the oscillations of the zero-point field. The cerebrospinal fluid that travels from the sacrum to the brain acts as a magnetic conducting fluid. When the biomass lives hunched over, subdued by the weight of the collective egregore and the friction of primitive emotions, this antenna collapses. Its nodes block. The signal they emit to the universe is weak, distorted, and plagued by static. The absolute operator straightens his geometry. Through the discipline of the breath and the immobility of the posture, you align each of the 33 nodes of your vertebral axis. By breathing with mathematical precision, you act. You force the cerebrospinal fluid to ascend against gravity, striking the pineal gland in the center of your brain. The calcite crystals inside this gland experience a piezoelectric effect, compressing under the pressure of the fluid and generating a massive electromagnetic field. Your brain becomes a biological transducer. You are literally using the hardware of your skull to translate the invisible frequencies of cosmic dark matter into electrical impulses that your nervous system can process. Your antenna is erect, free of interference, and pointing directly to the center of creation. You have established a high-bandwidth link to the source. Neuronal superconductivity, myelinating certainty. Neuroscience, through Hebb's law, has decreed that neurons that fire together wire together. Every time you allow your biological mind to repeat the loop of victimhood, you strengthen the neuronal networks of helplessness. Those pathways are covered in myelin, an insulator that makes the electrical impulse travel faster. You become a biological expert in failure. The sage uses neuroplasticity as a weapon of siege. To eradicate cognitive friction, you must execute a merciless pruning of your old identities. When external stimuli attempt to provoke fear or anger, you apply absolute containment. You do not react. You stay cold. By denying electricity to that ancient neuronal network, the connection atrophies and dies. Simultaneously, you direct all your voltage toward the construction of a new brain topology. Rehearse aseptic certainty 1,000 times a day. Contemplate your sovereignty until the frontal neurons form an unbreakable highway. As you sustain this new geometric frequency, your brain myelinates these new networks. A thermodynamic millisecond will arrive in which reacting with absolute power, silence, and immobility will require an energy expenditure of zero. Your brain has been physically rewired for domination. It is a biological fact. You have reached neuronal superconductivity, where pure intention travels at the speed of light without finding a single iota of internal resistance. Your thoughts are no longer hindered by the weight of old traumas. They cut through the ether with the precision of a laser, manifesting your will instantly in the field. Entropic fasting, purging density. Biological transmutation cannot be completed if you continue to inject density into your system. Enlightenment demands a translucent, aerodynamic body, free of anchors. Human metabolism spends enormous amounts of vital energy processing the dense matter you ingest and the toxicity you absorb from the matrix. The sage practices fasting not as a diet, but as an entropic purge. By periodically suspending the digestion of solid matter, you force the biological body to stop its exterior caloric wear and to redirect that energy inward. In the vacuum of the stomach, the cells initiate a process of autophagy, self-devouring. The body literally devours itself, destroying corrupt proteins, senescent cells, and metabolic toxins accumulated by the stress of the hologram. You are burning the thermodynamic slag of your physiology. As the body empties, your vibratory field becomes lighter and sharper. You are stripping away the lead. The brain, free of the chemical fog of continuous digestion, begins to operate in high-resolution gamma frequencies. Fasting is the sterilization of the hardware. It is the act of emptying the cellular cup so that the universe has physical space where it can pour the pure energy of the ether. You become hollow. Physiological fusion, the body as a field of light. The pinnacle of the epigenetics of enlightenment is the annihilation of the gap between the body and the spirit. Human biomass drags its body as if it were a heavy bag of meat, a biological nuisance that ages and hurts. The architect of the inner cosmos experiences a radical mutation. It is a phase shift. Through cardiac coherence, neuronal reconstruction, epigenetic signaling of power, and the tuning of his 33 nodes, the physical body ceases to be a dense mass. Your own perception of organic matter changes. You begin to experience your anatomy not as muscles, bones, and blood, but as a field of oscillation. You are a field of concentrated thermal oscillation. You feel the electricity in your nerve endings. You feel the magnetism pulsing in your rib cage. Your body has ceased to be an anchor to become the most advanced particle collider in the known universe. It is the perfect interface between the seen and the unseen. There is no longer biological fear that stops your quantum manifestations, because your entire physiology vibrates in the exact frequency of cosmic order. You have become crystallized light. You are prepared to sustain the infinite weight of your own empire without your cellular foundations trembling a single millimeter. The thermal conductivity of breath. To maintain this state of fusion, the operator must master the thermodynamics of breath. Breath is the bellows that stokes the fire of transmutation. By controlling the ratio of oxygen and carbon dioxide, you regulate the pH of your blood, creating an alkaline environment where entropy cannot survive. Rhythmic, deep, and intentional breathing acts as a mechanical pump for the lymphatic system and the cerebrospinal fluid. It is the physical cooling system for the high-voltage processor of your brain. Without breath control, the biological hardware overheats and reverts to the lower frequencies of survival and panic. The sage uses breath to maintain a constant internal temperature of presence. In the face of external chaos, a single deep, controlled breath can reset the nervous system to its baseline of sovereignty. This is the ultimate tool of real-time biological management, ensuring that the light field remains stable. The decrystallization of the fascia. Your fascial network is the crystalline matrix that holds the memory of your past. Every trauma and every fear is recorded as a physical contraction in this tissue. For full transmutation, the fascia must be decrystallized. This is achieved through movement that honors the spiral geometry of the body and the field. By untying the knots in your connective tissue, you release the trapped electrons and biophotons that were stuck in the past. Your body becomes fluid, not just in its movements, but in its ability to transmit information. A flexible body is a biological requirement for a flexible reality. You are clearing the wires. As the fascia relaxes, the piezoelectric signals generated by your movement become coherent. Instead of noise, your body starts to broadcast a symphony of order. This structural release is the physical counterpart to the dissolution of the ego, allowing the spirit to flow through the flesh with zero resistance. The biophotonic emission of mastery. At the highest level of biological transmutation, the body becomes a significant emitter of biophotons. These are packets of light used by cells for communication. In the sage, this emission is not random. It is structured by his will. You are literally projecting your intentions through the light of your cells. This emission creates an aura of influence that precedes you. People and environments are affected by the coherence of your light field before you even speak. You are a living projector of the new reality. Your biology has become the medium through which the quantum potential of the abyss becomes manifest. This is the end of the carbon trap. You have utilized the materials of the 3D world to build a 5D crystalline structure. You are in the world, but your biological signature is that of a higher dimension. You have successfully navigated the biology of transmutation and claimed your place as an architect of light. The sovereign baseline. The result of this process is a new biological baseline. You no longer have to try to be sovereign. Your cells do not know how to be anything else. Your default state is one of power, stillness, and creative potential. The struggle against the lower instincts has ended, replaced by the effortless grace of the spirit. From this sovereign baseline, you operate the matrix. You move through the hologram with the confidence of a programmer who knows the code. Your body is your temple, your laboratory, and your throne. The transmutation is complete. You are the living proof that matter can be elevated to the frequency of God. The journey continues, but the vessel is now ready for the open sea of the infinite. You have mastered the biology of enlightenment, and the universe bows in recognition of its sovereign master. The board is set, the pieces are aligned, and your light is the only power that matters in the vacuum of the all. Chapter 6. Aesthetic Entanglement, the Philosophy of Order and Beauty. The farce of superficiality, the contempt for form. There is a toxic dogma that has infected spiritual doctrines for millennia. The belief that matter is intrinsically impure and that attention to physical form, visual order, or aesthetics is an act of superficial vanity. Human biomass, in its pathetic attempt to justify its own entropy, has romanticized chaos and disorder as purity. They applaud the disheveled ascetic, idolize material poverty as a symbol of holiness, and reject beauty, assuming that true value only resides in the invisible interior. The sage, the architect of the unified field, repudiates this farce with mathematical coldness. In the physics of creation, the division between in and out is a total lie. The universe is a continuous fractal hologram. The macrocosm is an exact reflection of the microcosm. Despising outer form is not an act of enlightenment. It is a confession of three-dimensional impotence. If your mind has truly reached a state of quantum coherence, it is thermodynamically impossible for your surroundings to remain chaotic. Beauty is not a decorative luxury. Beauty is the visible manifestation of quantum order. It is the mathematical equation of the soul projected onto inert matter. When the absolute operator cultivates aesthetics, he does not do it to impress the biomass. He does it because elegance is the way the universe minimizes friction and loss. The thermodynamics of the golden ratio, low entropy order. To understand aesthetic entanglement, you must observe how the cosmos designs its own architecture. From the spiral of a galaxy to the arrangement of petals in a flower or the structure of DNA, nature does not organize matter randomly. It utilizes the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio, phi 1.618, as its primary growth code. This geometric proportion is not simply pleasing to the eye. In terms of fluid dynamics and thermodynamics, the golden ratio is the path of least resistance. It is the geometric form that allows for maximum structural growth with minimum energy expenditure. It is nature's way of being impeccably efficient while expanding its reach. When you observe a space or an object that embodies these mathematical proportions, your biological nervous system does not issue a cultural judgment. It issues a physical recognition. What you call beauty is your brain detecting a system of low entropy. It is your consciousness recognizing that there is no thermal leak or waste. The sage understands that surrounding oneself with beauty and order is an act of electromagnetic tuning. If your environment is asymmetrical and chaotic, you are subjecting your auric field to high entropy. In contrast, when you discipline your space under the laws of elegance, the environment becomes a tuning fork for your soul. Visual quantum entanglement, the bridge between dimensions. In quantum mechanics, entanglement describes how two particles can be connected such that the state of one instantly determines the state of the other, regardless of distance. The philosophy of the sage applies this principle to the bridge between the mental and material worlds. You entangle with what you give your attention to. If you allow your eyes to rest constantly on degradation, architectural neglect, and the vulgarity of modern society, your electromagnetic field entangles with that frequency of decay. Ugliness is highly contagious because it is the vibratory signature of defeat and spiritual death. It is a virus that drains your creative voltage. Aesthetic entanglement is the relentless decision to subject all matter in your personal ecosystem to a dictatorship of visual excellence. The sage selects his clothing, the light of his home, and the design of his tools with the rigor of an aerospace engineer. He does not seek ostentatious luxury, but aseptic sophistication. When you dress with symmetry and walk through a room where every object has a geometric purpose, you are sending an uninterrupted command to your subconscious. Chaos has no jurisdiction here. This visual mandate collapses the probability wave in the physical plane, anchoring your mind in a state of perpetual authority and command. The elegant void, the acoustics of intentional minimalism. The biomass confuses aesthetics with accumulation. They believe that to beautify a life they must add more elements, more noise, and more colors. The quantum operator operates under the law of subtraction. In wave physics, if you saturate a channel with too many frequencies, you get white noise. There is no clarity or message. True elegance is the eradication of the superfluous. It is the intentional void. The sage cultivates the elegant void in all fronts of his three-dimensional hologram. His physical spaces are stripped of any matter that does not serve a tactical function. His conversations are stripped of unnecessary words, gossip, or complaints. By eliminating excess matter and information, you return acoustics to your reality. The empty space is not dead, it is charged with quantum potential. It is in those clean and silent spaces where the unified field finds the perfect canvas to download the reality you have been programming. Elegance is stepping out of the way. The gravity of grace, frictionless domination. The aesthetics of the sage are not limited to inanimate objects, they infiltrate the biomechanics of his own body. Observe the human biomass moving through the world. They walk hunched by the weight of the collective egregore. Their movements are spasmodic, and their faces are tense from the friction of undisciplined minds. The final state of aesthetic entanglement is grace. Grace is not a poetic quality, it is movement with zero kinetic friction. When the operator has aligned his three centers and cooled his ego to the state of superfluidity, his presence physical mutates. He walks through the ashboard with a charged immobility. This physical grace generates a massive gravitational field. People around him, caught in their own chaotic frequencies, feel magnetically attracted and subdued by the deep geometric serenity he emits. You do not have to impose your will by shouting. The biomass gives way instinctively to the organism that moves with the cosmos. Geometric sovereignty, the visual decree. Turning your life into a work of art is not an escape from reality. It is the definitive invasion of reality. By subjecting your environment and your body to the discipline of beauty, you rise above mammalian survival. You empirically declare that you have ceased to be a product of chance and entropy. You are the architect. Aesthetic order is your visual decree before the unified field. You demonstrate to matter, in its own language of forms and symmetries, that you possess the structural capacity to sustain absolute power. The universe, being a perfect thermodynamic mirror, has no choice but to respond to that mathematical beauty and order. The refinement of the internal lens. The true aesthetic begins behind the eyelids. Before matter can be ordered in the 3D world, the internal lens of the observer must be polished. Most people have a scratched lens, distorted by the soot of their own traumas. The sage polishes this lens through the constant contemplation of high-frequency geometry. By visualizing perfect shapes, the flower of life, the Metatron's cube, or simple spheres of light, you are training your mind to perceive the underlying structure of the hologram. This mental refinement makes you allergic to disorder. You develop a biological intolerance for anything that breaks the harmony of the field. This refinement is what allows the operator to see opportunities where others see chaos. Because his internal acoustics are so clean, he can detect the faint signal of a high-value probability amidst the noise of the market. He is a predator of order, hunting for the symmetry that the universe hides from the blind. The architecture of light and shadow. Aesthetics is the master manipulation of light. In your environment, the way light reflects off surfaces dictates the rate of information exchange between your eyes and the field. Flat, dull surfaces absorb energy. Polished, geometric surfaces amplify it. The sage designs his habitat to be a hall of mirrors for his intent. By using specific materials, glass, polished stone, or metals, you create an environment that breathes light. This photonic abundance feeds your cells and maintains the structure of your plasma. You are essentially building a solar temple in which your consciousness can expand without the resistance of darkness. Shadow, however, is not the enemy, it is the frame. The sage uses shadow to define the edges of his creation. In the elegant void, shadows provide the depth that gives matter its weight. By mastering the balance of light and shadow, you are mastering the dual nature of the quantum field itself. The sophistication of the bio-vibratory signature. Your personal style is the frequency you broadcast to the matrix. When you choose a specific garment or a specific scent, you are selecting a vibratory filter. The sage does not follow fashion. He designs his bio-vibratory signature to signal his rank within the hierarchy of the conscious observers. Every detail, from the symmetry of a haircut to the posture of the hands, is a pixel in the image you project into the mirror of the world. If you are sloppy, the universe treats you as a low-priority process. If you are impeccably designed, the field allocates more resources to your specific coordinate of existence. This is the cold pragmatism of beauty. It is an economic signal. It tells the field that you are a high-value asset, a stable node through which the universe can express its own desire for order. Beauty is the ultimate currency, and the sage is the master of its minting and its circulation. The final synthesis, living in the poem. In the end, the distinction between working and existing vanishes. Every act, from pouring a glass of water to signing a $1 million contract, is performed with the same aesthetic precision. You are no longer living a life. You are composing a poem in real time, using the atoms of the world as your ink. Living in the poem means that every second of your experience is saturated with meaning. There are no incidental moments. Every movement is a brushstroke. Every silence is a verse. This level of aesthetic saturation makes you invulnerable to the boredom and despair that consume the human biomass. You have become the art itself. You are the sculptor and the stone, the painter and the canvas. The aesthetic entanglement is the realization that the universe is not a machine to be fixed, but a masterpiece to be continuously unveiled. In this state, you are truly one with the architect of the infinite, the authority of the beautiful. When you stand in your power, fully entangled with the aesthetics of the divine, your authority becomes self-evident. You do not need titles or badges. Your beauty and your order are your credentials. The world bows to the beautiful because beauty is the highest form of truth in the material plane. The path of the sage concludes in the realization that there is no higher purpose than the expansion of order and beauty. By becoming the living embodiment of these principles, you fulfill your role as the guardian of the field. You have transitioned from the ash of the 3D board to the gold of the cosmic design. The hologram is now a reflection of your own impeccable grace. You look into the mirror and you see the universe. The universe looks into the mirror and it sees you. The entanglement is total. The beauty is absolute. The command is final. Chapter 7. Pragmatic Collapse, Materializing the Will. False asceticism, the heresy of inaction. The greatest thermodynamic deception that has infected humanity's spiritual development is the glorification of passivity. Human biomass, in its deep cowardice before the friction of the 3D world, has designed a belief system where inaction is disguised as inner peace and material poverty is romanticized as a state of purity. To believe that mastery of the unified field consists of meditating in a vacuum while the physical ecosystem crumbles into mediocrity is a heresy against the laws of physics. The universe is constant movement, expansion, and transmutation of energy into matter. Spirituality that does not alter matter is a sterile illusion. It is an open circuit where voltage escapes without starting the motor. The sage is not a passive spectator of the hologram, he is the absolute operator of reality. If you have purged your ego, aligned the sacred geometry of your environment, and rewritten your epigenetics, you have accumulated an immense gravitational mass. To leave that energy latent in the mental plane is a cosmic waste. Pragmatic collapse is the ballistic mandate to take that pure frequency, extract it from the ether, and crash it against the three-dimensional ash board. The sage demands the performance of his local universe. Mental peace is only the launchpad for your empire. The final goal is the absolute domination of your ecosystem, manifesting structures of power, liquid wealth, and temporal sovereignty. You must force the material world to yield to your internal design. Inaction is the signature of the weak. The operator acts to solidify his vision into a concrete and undeniable physical presence. The equation of financial gravity, densifying capital. To materialize your will with impeccable corporate and structural lethality, you must format your concept of money and physical resources. Gaseous humanity sees capital as a biological end, a piece of paper or a digital number that allows them to survive. They compete for it from desperation, creating electromagnetic friction. This friction actually repels abundance. In the alchemy of the sage, capital is nothing more than densified quantum energy. It is the thermodynamic equivalent of the capacity to act in the physical world. Money flows toward structures of least resistance and greatest gravity. It is attracted by the density of your purpose. When you discipline your mind and extirpate emotional need, your field becomes aerodynamic. You no longer chase capital. You create the spatial and mental architecture so that capital collapses toward you. This is the mechanics of materialization in its purest and most aggressive state. You do not wait. You design the arrival. You do not sit down to visualize coins falling from the sky. You design receiving systems in the real world. You open physical channels, businesses, investments, high-performance alliances that act as entry ports for the cosmic server to download the 95% dark matter directly into your infrastructure. You build the wires. You ask the unified field for massive liquidity, but you provide the exact three-dimensional wiring where that high-voltage current can travel without setting your life on fire. Capital is the blood of your material empire. You must ensure the vessels are strong, wide, and perfectly aligned with the flow of universal energy. Tactical friction, action in a state of superfluidity. Pragmatic collapse requires action, but not the desperate action of a frightened mammal. The ordinary man confuses movement with progress. They exhaust themselves running on a thermodynamic hamster wheel, burning millions of calories in jobs they hate, and forcing results through stress. That is action with high kinetic friction. The operator executes what we call tactical friction. Having reached the state of inner superfluidity, where doubt, fear of failure, and the need for validation have been annihilated, the sage moves in the physical world without emotional resistance. He works, negotiates, and builds empires with an icy immobility. When you act from aseptic certainty, a single strategic move executed in the silence of superfluidity has more gravitational mass than 10 years of the frenetic effort of the biomass. You do not try to convince the market or society of your value. You impose your frequency through calculated and relentless actions. If a project requires brute force, you apply it without your pulse altering. If it requires strategic waiting, you stop without anxiety contaminating your magnetic field. Physical action simply becomes the chisel with which you finish carving the edges of the reality that you already collapsed in your meditation. The ecosystem of alliances, social quantum entanglement. No empire stands in a vacuum. The large-scale materialization of the will requires the assembly of a transmission network. In the three-dimensional plane, this translates into the architecture of your strategic alliances. Human biomass surrounds itself with friends and partners based on emotional sympathy or habit. They create networks plagued by white noise, where individuals feed back into each other's biological limitations. The sage applies quantum entanglement to his human relationships. He audits his circle with mathematical cruelty. Every individual in your orbit is a node in your printed circuit. You are the system's architect. If a node generates resistance, doubt, or entropy, it is extirpated from the operating system without negotiations or drama. You must surround yourself exclusively with organisms that possess their own center of gravity. When you connect your network with high-performance individuals, harmonic amplification is generated. You are not simply collaborating in the physical plane, you are entangling your electromagnetic fields. The will of one accelerates the manifestation of the other. Together, you create a backbone so massive that you can alter markets and dictate the conditions of your environment without asking for permission. The physical anchor, the bridge between the ether and the ashboard. Materialization demands an undeniable physical point of contact. For the quantum universe to download a new reality, you must provide it with a material mold in the present. We call this the physical anchor. If your will is the conquest of a new territory, you do not limit yourself to holding the inner vibration. You execute an irreversible physical act in that direction, no matter how small, that proves to the unified field that the 3D space is prepared for reception. You buy the internet domain. You sign the preliminary contract. You acquire the precision tool. You restructure the geometry of your office for new partners. This physical act, executed without the slightest shadow of doubt, acts as a thermodynamic beacon. It is a condensed decree. The universe reads this physical anchor as an acknowledgement that the entry ports are open and configured. By moving inert matter, you force the cosmos to fill the geometric void. You are commanding the light to fill the shape you have carved in the physical world. Without the anchor, the vision remains a ghost. With the anchor, the vision becomes an unavoidable destiny. You are pinning your intention to the fabric of reality, ensuring it cannot drift back into the sea of probabilities. Ballistic execution, the operator's mandate. The millisecond arrives in the sage's trajectory when preparation ends. You have sterilized the mind, tamed your physiology, isolated your environment from entropy, and assembled your network of superconductive nodes. Here, contemplation ceases. Here begins ballistic execution. The work is now a matter of force. Spirituality becomes a military discipline. You face the phenomenal world not as a student hoping to learn a lesson, but as the architect who comes to reclaim his property. When you demand the result, you do it with an authority that freezes the blood of the biological ego. You do not tolerate mediocrity anywhere. You do not accept illness in your biology, and you do not allow disrespect in your magnetic field. Pragmatic collapse is the definitive triumph of the spirit over inertia. It is the physical evidence that you have transcended the simulation. When you walk through your materialized empire, you feel the weight. You touch the walls of your structure, the weight of your capital, and the unshakable loyalty of your nodes, knowing none of this was luck. It was gelid calculation, applied thermodynamics, and the pure will of an operator who decided to stop being a victim. The ether has become flesh. The will is solid matter. The high-velocity transduction of intent. The true secret of pragmatic collapse is the speed of transduction. Transduction is the process of converting one form of energy into another. The sage is a high-speed transducer, turning the silent electricity of his thoughts into the thunderous roar of material achievements. This requires a nervous system of gold. If there is any lag between your intention and your action, you are losing energy to the environment. The operator minimizes this lag by practicing immediate obedience to his own higher commands. When the internal vision is clear, the body must follow instantly, bypassing the hesitant filters of the analytical brain. This creates a state of momentum that becomes virtually unstoppable. In the physical world, an object in motion stays in motion. By maintaining a high frequency of pragmatic successes, you create a self-sustaining loop of manifestation. Each success increases your gravitational mass, making the next collapse even easier. Dominating the information field of industry. To manifest wealth and power, you must dominate the information field of your chosen industry. Information is the precursor to matter. He who possesses the highest resolution of the information field can see the patterns of the future before they crystallize. The sage uses his gamma-theta bridge to scan the market. You are looking for the geometric flaws in the current systems, the places where entropy is high and efficiency is low. These flaws are your points of entry. By introducing a higher order into these entropic zones, you naturally draw the capital toward yourself. You are providing the solution the field is seeking. This is not work in the traditional sense, it is an act of sovereign correction. You are adjusting the hologram to match the laws of universal geometry. By doing so, the rewards of the system, profit, influence, and status, are automatically allocated to your coordinate. You are the field's preferred administrator. The cold storage of resources. A materialized empire requires cold storage. In thermodynamics, cold is the absence of heat, agitation. In finance, cold is the absence of emotional attachment. To hold large amounts of capital and power, you must be emotionally cold toward them. If you get hot with excitement or hot with fear, you create friction. Friction causes the capital to evaporate or the power to leak. The sage treats his resources with the same mathematical detachment with which he treats the oxygen he breathes. They are tools, not identities. This detachment allows you to move massive amounts of resources with the precision of a surgeon. By remaining cold, you preserve the superconductivity of your assets. They can move through the market at the speed of light, doing your bidding without getting stuck in the sludge of social expectations. You are the master of the flow, ensuring that every cent and every node is working for your sovereign vision. The architectural seal of permanence. The final stage of pragmatic collapse is the architectural seal. Once you have materialized your goal, you must seal it against the entropy of the world. You do this by reinforcing the sacred geometry of the result. You embed your intention into the very structure of your business or your physical project. This seal ensures that the manifestation does not decay. It remains a stable, high-frequency node in the hologram, serving as a platform for your next expansion. You have turned a temporary probability into a permanent reality. You have carved your name into the ash of the 3D world with the fire of the spirit. You stand now as a monument to what is possible when the mind of a human is aligned with the physics of a god. The board is no longer a challenge. It is your canvas. You move through the world with the quiet grace of one who has already won. The pragmatic collapse is complete. The empire is real. Chapter 8. The acoustics of the void, the power of the zero-point field. The false vacuum, the lie of nothingness. Human perception is designed to register matter and light. When the ordinary man looks at the space between two objects or contemplates the night sky between the stars, his biological brain processes that space as nothingness. They believe the void is an absence, a sterile and dead abyss. This is a trap. This optical illusion is the shackle that keeps the biomass enslaved to the tyranny of solid matter. Quantum physics, by descending to the most extreme subatomic scales, has shattered this belief. If you take a cubic meter of space and extract from it every atom of gas and every particle of dust, it is not empty. If you block all electromagnetic and thermal radiation, cooling the interior to absolute zero, Newtonian physics would dictate that no energy remains. However, quantum instruments reveal a terrifying and majestic miracle. The vacuum is boiling. There is an infinite ocean of latent energy where virtual particles are born. This phenomenon is known as the zero-point field. This vacuum is not nothing. It is the womb of creation. It is a hyperdense soup of pure potentiality that mathematically contains enough energy in a single cubic centimeter to boil all the oceans on the planet. The sage does not seek power in the visible 5%. The absolute operator understands that true cosmic gravity resides in the acoustics of the void. He does not struggle with inert matter. He aligns himself with the underlying field that generates all matter. By tapping into this source, he accesses a reservoir of power that makes 3D efforts seem like infantile play. The stridency of the intellect, the noise of the biomass. To access this level of incalculable energy, there is a non-negotiable thermodynamic toll. You must silence the stridency of your biological mind. The human intellect is a tool of evolutionary survival, designed to calculate 3D threats. It never shuts up. It produces a constant internal monologue of anxiety. It is plagued by nostalgia for the past, petty calculations, and superficial judgments. In the electromagnetic plane, this mental chatter is not harmless. It is a deafening static. It is white noise. When the biomass tries to manifest its cosmic desires, they do so by shouting over this noise. Their minds are chaotic. The unified field does not respond to stridency. Stridency is entropy, and zero-point energy repels entropy. If you try to approach the quantum vacuum carrying the neurotic monologue of your biological ego, you will hit an acoustic wall. The universe will not give you the source code while you act like a mammal. The path of the sage demands mastery of internal acoustics. It demands the extermination of internal dialogue. It is not about relaxing. It is about executing a lethal power cut to the analytical mind, turning off the servers of the 3D personality so that deep silence can emerge. You must become a silent observer. Identity disintegration. No one, nowhere, at no time. Entering the zero-point field is an act of quantum death. You cannot cross the threshold toward infinite intelligence while being yourself. The ego is dense matter. Your name, your profession, your childhood traumas, and your bank account are anchors that fix you to the exact coordinate of space and time. If you meditate while maintaining the consciousness that you are a specific person in a specific room in the present year, you are not in the void. You are trapped in the hologram. The Absolute Operator's meditation is a technology of disintegration. You close your eyes and withdraw attention from the environment. You stop feeling the room. You stop feeling the limits of your biological body. You suspend your name and your history. You become no one. You place yourself nowhere. You situate yourself at no time. By stripping away the illusion of identity, your frequency rises dizzyingly. You are no longer a particle. You go from being a dense particle, subject to 3D gravity, to becoming an expansive wave. You merge with the absolute blackness of the quantum vacuum. In this state of disintegration, you are no longer a body trying to connect with the universe. You are the unified field experiencing itself through a point. The acoustics of silence, the sub-bass of the universe. When you manage to sustain this vacuity, you discover that quantum silence is not the absence of sound. It is an overwhelming acoustic density. It is a sub-bass frequency, a deep and omnipotent hum that sustains the structure of the galaxies. In this level of consciousness, the laws of 3D physics collapse. The aerodynamic resistance of daily life does not exist. Here there is no caloric effort, no struggle, no latency time. You are submerged in the womb of creation, floating in the ocean of infinite potentiality of the zero-point field. This is the only place where true inner alchemy can be executed. Since the void is the origin of all matter, any electromagnetic instruction, thought you introduce here, will find no friction to weaken it. In the physical world, a desire requires years of work to materialize through dense matter. In the zero-point field, a thought has the mass of a supernova. Geometric injection, sowing the coordinate. Once settled in the acoustics of the void, the sage does not surrender to a passive trance. You are the observer, and you have entered the source code to rewrite the matrix. Here is where you execute the geometric injection. From the absolute center of your silence, you extract the image of reality. You do not invoke words, because words belong to the slow language of the intellect. You invoke geometry, pure emotion, and the mathematical certainty of the finished work. You feel the architecture of your new empire, the perfect healing of your cells, or the domination of your financial ecosystem. You deposit this vibratory signature into the blackness of the void. You do not beg. You do not feel hope, because hope implies that the result is uncertain. Hope is poison in the zero-point field. You feel the supreme authority of the Creator, who just introduced a new line of code into the cosmos. The quantum seed has been planted in the most fertile soil in the universe. The unified field, lacking an intellect to judge if your order is possible, obeys instantly. It wraps your intention with the necessary dark matter to begin physical gestation. The result is already being computed in the field. Return to the ashboard, sustaining the paradox. The right culminates with the return. Slowly, you allow your consciousness to descend back into the density of your biological body. You feel the weight of gravity, the temperature of the air, and the limitation of human form again. You open your eyes to the 3D ashboard, but alchemy has occurred. Your physiology has mutated. The human biomass meditates to escape its miserable life, and upon opening their eyes, they return to being the same terrified victim. The sage opens his eyes, and the 3D hologram trembles. You have returned from the void, bringing the inertia of the zero-point field. Your cells have been washed in the ocean of infinite potentiality, and your auric field is charged with a voltage that physical matter cannot resist. From that millisecond, outer reality begins to bend. The obstacles that seemed unshakable yesterday, today disintegrate due to lack of gravity. Alliances, capital, and the exact circumstances you sowed in the void begin to precipitate into your daily life through synchronicity. You stay immovable. You walk through the noisy world, but you keep the acoustics of the void in your chest. You are the sub-bass silence, walking among stridency. The thermodynamics of the infinite void. The zero-point field represents the absolute baseline of the universe. In thermodynamic terms, it is the state of lowest possible energy but highest potential information. When you align your internal temperature with this field, you become a superconductor for the manifestation of your own sovereign will. The ordinary man is hot with emotion, desire, and fear. This heat creates a massive amount of entropy, which prevents him from interacting with the cold precision of the field. The sage cools his system through the discipline of silence. By reaching this state, he can move vast amounts of energy. The sub-bass frequency of the void is the foundation upon which all structures are built. By mastering this frequency, you are no longer building on the shifting sands of the 3D world. You are building on the bedrock of the infinite. Your manifestations become stable, powerful, and geometrically perfect. Eradicating the ghost of scarcity. Scarcity is a belief that only exists in the limited 5% of the visible world. In the zero-point field, there is no scarcity. There is only infinite density. When you operate from the void, the idea of not having enough becomes a mathematical impossibility. You are connected to the source of all wealth. To erase the ghost of scarcity, you must use the silence of the void to wash away the old programs of your lineage. Every memory of lack is a piece of entropic noise that must be annihilated. In the blackness of the field, you see the abundance of the galaxies as the natural state of your own existence. This realization is not a psychological comfort, it is a structural realignment. Your magnetic field expands to match the density of the field. You begin to attract resources with the same ease that a planet attracts a moon. You have moved from the logic of a beggar to the acoustics of a sovereign. The precision of the quantum command. In the vacuum, the clarity of your command is everything. A fuzzy intention creates a fuzzy reality. The sage uses the silence of the void to sharpen his intent until it is as thin as a single photon. This level of precision allows you to target specific areas of the hologram for immediate restructuring. Whether you are targeting a financial bottleneck or a biological decay, the command issued from the zero-point field acts as an unstoppable decree. The field recognizes the high-resolution signature and begins the process of materialization. You do not need to repeat the command. The void never forgets. Your task is simply to maintain the acoustics of the work done. When you open your eyes, you do not check to see if it worked. You know it is done because the physics of the void cannot fail. This certainty is the final seal that prevents the entropic noise of the world from undoing your creation. The sovereignty of the unconditioned being. By mastering the transition into the void, you achieve the ultimate form of sovereignty. You are no longer conditioned by your body, your environment, or your time. You have found the secret door to the control room of the universe. From here, the 3D board is a playground for your enlightened will. The no one, nowhere, no time state is the ultimate freedom. It is the realization that your true nature is the vacuum itself, the infinite potential that creates all things. When you realize this, the fear of death, loss, or failure vanishes. How can the void fear anything when it is the source of everything? You walk through the hologram as a god in disguise. You use the acoustics of the void to maintain your internal order, even in the midst of the most entropic environments. You are the living, singular point around which the field organizes itself. You have returned to the throne of your own consciousness. The final synthesis. Sound and silence. The path of the sage leads to the final synthesis of sound and silence. You use the strident world as the stage for your actions, but you use the silent void as the source of your power. This duality creates a life of absolute effectiveness and deep, elegant peace. You are the master of the field. The 33-node antenna is now a conduit for the infinite. The liquid crystal of your blood is the resonator for the sub-bass of the galaxies. Every breath is a ripple in the zero-point field. You have mastered the acoustics of the void. You have become the living word of the creation. The journey into the nothingness has revealed that you are the all. The ash of the world is your ink, and the void is your canvas. Write your empire into existence with the cold, majestic precision of a master architect. The universe is waiting for your next command. The silence is yours. Chapter 9. Synchronicity and Gravity, Attracting Without Effort. The Fallacy of Kinetic Exhaustion, the Sweat of the Biomass. There is a thermodynamic lie embedded in the core of modern society, the belief that the universe rewards physical suffering and exhaustion. Human biomass has been conditioned to venerate kinetic effort. They believe that to alter material reality and reach power, they must subject their biological bodies to grueling days of struggle. They believe they must push heavy rocks uphill, compete savagely against other mammals, and spill their vital energy into a sea of continuous stress. The ordinary man measures his merit by the amount of friction he endures. The sage measures his mastery by the absence of it. He understands that friction is simply wasted potential. In classical physics, if you want to move an object from point A to point B, you must apply mechanical force. This generates resistance and dissipates heat. However, on an astrophysical scale, planets and stars do not push each other using brute force. They govern their immense territories through gravity and alignment. Gravity requires no effort, no movement. It does not sweat or exhaust itself. It simply is. It is a curvature in the fabric of space-time generated by the presence of a dense mass. In inner alchemy, trying to manifest wealth or domination through brute force is an act of cosmic ignorance. You are fighting the field. If you push three-dimensional matter, Newton's third law guarantees that matter will push back with the same force and in the opposite direction. Desperate effort engenders three-dimensional resistance. The path of the sage demands abandoning kinetic wear to master the law of spiritual gravity. You are the fixed point. You do not chase your goals. You chase the absolute density of your own being. When your inner mass is heavy enough, the universe has no choice but to curve toward your feet. The objects of your desire fall into your lap because the geometry of the space you inhabit has been altered by your very presence. Electromagnetic density, building the gravitational well. How does a human acquire the gravitational mass necessary to attract an empire without moving a single muscle in desperation? Through the thermodynamic condensation of their energy. Throughout the previous chapters, you have been subjected to a process of relentless purging. You have stopped the leaks of your own power. You have extirpated the ego and the need for validation, closing the fissures through which your voltage bled out. You have purified your physical environment through sacred geometry, eliminating spatial entropy. You have disconnected from collective fear and emptied your analytical mind into the zero-point field. You are cold. By not dissipating your energy outward in the form of complaints, conflicts, or emotional stridency, that energy does not disappear, it condenses. Your auric field, once a gaseous and weak cloud, compresses. You become infinitely dense. You become a black hole of conscious will, a singularity in the hologram. A black hole does not go out to hunt stars or strive to capture light. It simply rests in the cold immobility of its own overwhelming mass. Everything that crosses its event horizon is sucked toward its center irreversibly. When the absolute operator reaches this density, the paradigm of hard work collapses. Liquid capital, strategic alliances, and physical resources begin to gravitate toward you, accelerating their speed as they approach your orbit, absorbed by the undeniable weight of your aseptic certainty. You are the attractor. The universe recognizes your mass and reorders itself to pay tribute to your sovereign stability. Synchronicity, the logistic language of the unified field. When you have established a perfect gravitational well and delegated the how to infinite intelligence, the universe begins to deliver matter through the phenomenon most misunderstood by humanity: synchronicity. Carl Jung defined it as the simultaneous occurrence of events not connected by physical cause and effect. The human biomass, in its statistical blindness, calls this luck or chance. They believe meeting the exact person at the exact time is a whim of fate. The sage knows that chance does not exist in a quantumly entangled universe. Synchronicity is the empirical evidence that your gravity is working. It is math. It is the mathematical logistics of the unified field executing your order. Imagine you have set the coordinate for a new corporate structure. In the physical plane, you are miles from the resources. If you operated from kinetic wear, you would try to force closed doors. But from gravity, you stay immovable. The universe then alters the variables. A flight is delayed, forcing an investor to sit next to you. An email is sent to the wrong address and ends up in your inbox, revealing a competitor's flaw. A weather event alters markets in your favor. The unified field manipulates the dynamics of fluids for you. The field orchestrates a sequence of events of terrifying precision, ensuring your desire collides with you without you having taken a single step out of your center. Synchronicity is the fiber optic network of the cosmos. You only have to keep the receiver on. You are the destination of the universal flow, Wu Wei, action through non-friction. The absence of kinetic effort does not mean physical paralysis. The sage walks, talks, designs, and operates on the three-dimensional ashboard, but does so under the doctrine of Wu Wei. Wu Wei is an ancient Taoist concept that mediocre intellectuals translate as doing nothing. This is a mistake. The correct quantum translation is frictionless action. It is movement in a state of superfluidity. When synchronicity puts a massive opportunity in front of you, you do not pounce on it with the desperation of a hungry predator. Urgency is a confession of lack. The operator executes the necessary action. He signs the contract or moves the capital with a lethal and silent grace. Your physical body moves, but your internal magnetic field remains unchanged, operating at 0 degrees Kelvin. Acting from Wu Wei means there is no internal resistance between what you are doing and what the universe is delivering. You are a hollow channel. Effort disappears because you are moving in favor of the curvature of space-time that you yourself have created, not against it. You row in favor of a cosmic river that flows at the speed of light. Victory becomes routine, mathematical, and devoid of human drama. It is inevitable. Contempt for the means of transport. For spiritual gravity to function at its maximum capacity, you must annihilate attachment to logistics. You must cultivate an absolute contempt for the means of transport the universe chooses to deliver your manifestation. The aerodynamic resistance that slows down seekers is born from their rigid expectations. They ask for financial freedom, but their biological mind dictates it can only arrive through a promotion at their current job. By fixing the distribution channel, they strangle infinite intelligence. They have closed infinite quantum doors to stay looking through the smallest and rustiest keyhole of all. The sage's center of gravity does not discriminate the route of arrival. If you ask for temporal sovereignty, you do not care if the universe destroys your current company to force you to found the ultimate empire, or if it delivers it through an unexpected alliance. You are indifferent to the route taken. This indifference is not apathy, it is empirical trust in the physics of attraction. By not trying to micromanage the variables of the cosmos, your electromagnetic field remains dilated and receptive. You accept the destruction of old structures without a tear, knowing the collapse is the necessary void for new gold. Inevitable impact, assimilation without combustion. The climax of the law of gravity manifests at the moment of impact. That millisecond in which synchronicity delivers the heavy physical matter into your hands. The empire, the regenerated health, the unshakable alliance. What does the ordinary man do? He enters into emotional combustion. They jump for joy, shout, and seek social validation, emitting extreme emotional radiation. In doing so, they burn the energy they just received, dissipating it into the atmosphere. Their gravitational well fractures due to excitement, and matter begins to move away again. They lose wealth quickly. The architect of the unified field does not celebrate. Celebration is the subconscious admission that you doubted victory was possible. When cosmic reality collides with you, you assimilate the matter in thermodynamic silence. You receive the power with the same routine coldness a planet receives an asteroid. You maintain the immobility of your nervous system. By not emitting heat, by not reacting with biological hysteria, your gravity does not fluctuate. The newly acquired matter merges with your electromagnetic field, stabilizing permanently in your reality. You have achieved the miracle of conscious physics. You have attracted the entire universe without lifting a finger, and you have devoured it without spilling a single drop of its immensity. You are the consumer of worlds, the one who remains still while the hologram folds to your will. The gravity of your presence is the only law that remains standing. The refinement of gravitational focus. To sustain this state of high-density attraction, the operator must refine his focus until it becomes a singular point of pressure. Most people have a leaky focus. They think about their goal, then they think about their dinner, then they think about their insecurities. This creates a fluctuating and weak gravity. The sage practices the discipline of the single thought. He holds the frequency of the completed work as a constant background hum in his nervous system. This consistency is what creates the mass. A planet does not stop having gravity when it gets bored. Its mass is constant. Your intention must be just as stable. When your focus is refined, the noise of the 3D world becomes irrelevant. You no longer see obstacles. You see the field rearranging itself. This clarity prevents the heat of doubt from disrupting your superconductivity. You are a biological diamond, hard and clear, through which the light of the infinite passes. The elasticity of the field. As your gravity increases, you will notice that the field around you becomes more elastic. Things happen faster. The time between a thought and its physical reflection shrinks. This is because you have removed the viscosity of the old ego-based programs. You are now operating in a low-friction zone. In this elastic field, you can perform surgical manifestations. You can nudge a specific variable in your business or health with a single second of focused intent. This level of precision is the hallmark of the high-level operator. You are no longer using a sledgehammer to shape your life. You are using a scalpel. The elasticity of the field also means that you must be impeccable with your internal states. A moment of uncontrolled rage or despair can create a gravitational wave that disrupts your current manifestations. You must remain the master of your own temperature, ensuring the field remains a smooth mirror for your will. The sovereign solitude of the singular point. The higher your density, the more unique your perspective becomes. You may find that the biomass no longer understands your actions or your stillness. This is the sovereign solitude. A black hole does not explain itself to the stars it consumes. It simply follows its own internal physics. You must be comfortable with being a mystery to the world. If you try to explain your gravity to those who are still caught in kinetic effort, you will only create friction. Keep your mouth shut and your field dense. Let the results be the only testimony of your power. The biomass respects results even if it cannot understand the method. This solitude is where your greatest power resides. It is the isolation of the laboratory, the sanctuary of the creator. In this space, you are the only observer, and therefore, you are the only architect. You have moved beyond the need for human company and into the companionship of the infinite intelligence. The final collapse, the universe within. In the end, you realize that you are not attracting things from the outside. You are simply expanding the territory of your own consciousness. The empire, the wealth, and the health were always within you as possibilities. Your gravity simply brought them into the 3D frame. You are the universe experiencing itself as a center. The distinction between me and my world vanishes. You are the field. You are the gravity. You are the synchronicity. Every event in your life is a self-generated ripple in your own ocean of potentiality. You have reached the end of the search and the beginning of the eternal manifestation. You stand on the ashboard as a giant of light whose every breath curves the stars. You are the sovereign of gravity, and the hologram is your obedient servant. The path of the sage has led you back to the center of all things, where effort is a memory and power is your natural state. Chapter 10. The Sage's Singularity, Mastery of the Eternal Now. The Trap of Chronology, the Linear Time Hologram. The last and densest veil of the three-dimensional simulation is not space nor matter nor the opinion of the biomass. It is linear time. The biological brain of the ordinary man is a sequential machine. It is programmed to perceive reality as an unbreakable straight line traveling from the past, crossing a fleeting present, and heading toward an uncertain future. This chronological perception is an evolutionary survival mechanism necessary for the mammal to remember where danger lies and calculate how long it will take to reach food. But in the realm of conscious matter and quantum mechanics, linear time is an absolute fallacy. Advanced physics postulates that past, present, and future are not separate events. They exist simultaneously in a static space-time block. The flow of time is an optical illusion generated by the act of observation. When spiritual humanity attempts to manifest its empire, they commit the most catastrophic thermodynamic error. They conjure their desires in future time. They project their sovereignty and wealth toward an imaginary tomorrow. By doing so, they send a precise geometric instruction to the unified field: keep me in a perpetual state of waiting. The universe, being an obedient mirror, materializes that order perfectly. The finish line recedes at the same speed at which the individual advances. The future never collapses into the present. It remains at an unreachable distance. The extinction of hope, the poison of expectation. For the sage, the word hope is a vulgar term. It is the consolation of weak organisms that have no control over their electromagnetic spectrum. Hope implies doubt. When you hope for something to happen, you are thermodynamically admitting that there is a possibility that it will not occur. You are emitting a bifurcated quantum wave. This wave is divided between victory and failure. This destructive interference ensures that your will dissipates in the ether before touching solid matter. The absolute operator eradicates hope and replaces it with the memory of the future. Since the future already exists in the zero-point field as a probability wave, the sage does not wish to reach it. The sage remembers it. He closes his eyes and accesses the exact coordinate of his already materialized empire. He feels the architecture of his success with the same biological sharpness and the same gravitational weight with which the ordinary man remembers a childhood trauma. He anchors the result in the physical now through chemical signaling. If your physical body secretes cortisol when remembering an accident from 10 years ago, proving that your nervous system does not distinguish between a memory and the present, the sage hacks this same mechanism in reverse. He injects the endorphins and the icy peace of future domination into his bloodstream, forcing his cells to live in that reality. The dilation of suffering, gravity, and latency. Albert Einstein empirically demonstrated that time is relative. Near an object with extreme gravitational mass, such as a black hole, time slows down. This is called gravitational time dilation. In the alchemy of the spirit, fear, obsessive need, and anxiety over results act as a dark and dense mass that deforms your local space-time. When you desperately need your manifestation to load so you can feel secure against the 3D world, you are generating a stifling gravity around you. The result? Time stretches. What should take a cosmic day to materialize takes a biological decade. You feel you are crossing an endless desert. You feel the friction of every second. It is not the universe punishing you with latency. It is you who has frozen the cosmic clock through the overwhelming weight of your own desperation. Mastery of the eternal now demands letting go of the anchor. By reaching the state of emotional superfluidity, where the ego has been purged, your gravity of fear falls to zero. You become infinitely light. By removing the mass of your need, time around you stops dilating. The temporal distance between the injection of your will into the vacuum and its crystallization on the ashboard is drastically reduced, approaching absolute immediacy. You move at the speed of thought, bypassing the sludge of human waiting. The event horizon, the millisecond of transmutation. When you have mastered the purge of the ego, the resonance of your space, the epigenetics of your body, and the silence of your mind, you approach the thermodynamic climax of your 3D existence. You become a singularity. In astrophysics, the singularity is the center of a black hole, a point of zero volume and infinite density. It is a place where the normal laws of physics cease to function. Time and space merge into a single incomprehensible entity. In the path of the sage, reaching the singularity means you have merged your consciousness entirely with the present moment. You have withdrawn all your vital energy from the past and all your anxiety from the future. You have compressed 100% of your electromagnetic voltage into a fraction of a millisecond, the eternal now. In this state, the act of creating ceases to be a journey. There is no longer cause and effect separated by months of kinetic effort. You operate at the event horizon of the universe, where will and matter are one. A thought emitted from this singularity does not travel through time to manifest. It alters the very structure of the present. The sage does not make things happen. The sage rewrites the code of the instant in which he exists. The physical world, which is inherently slow, is subjected to unbearable pressure. Atoms reorganize. The monarch of the instant absolute immobility. The final state of spiritual evolution is not flying toward ethereal dimensions. It is descending with crushing weight upon the present moment and dominating it. Human biomass runs frantically, trying to catch time, trying to beat entropy, aging and dying in the process. The architect of the inner cosmos stops. He reaches absolute immobility. You know there is nowhere to go because all space coordinates are entangled with your perception. You know there is no future to wait for because all timelines collapse exactly at the geometric point where you decide to rest your sovereign gaze. You are the fixed point around which the entire 3D hologram must rotate. Sitting in your mathematically perfect environment with a biological body that breathes in the frequency of cellular immortality and a mind emptied of all noise, you become the vertex of creation. You are the origin of the coordinate system. The material illusion has been conquered. The 3D ashboard surrenders to your unified field. You have ceased to be an inhabitant of the universe to become the thermodynamic force that designs, sustains, and executes it beat by beat in the sublime and aseptic perfection of the eternal now. The crown is yours, and the present is your throne. You are the beginning and the end of every probability that touches your field. The superconductivity of the present moment. To inhabit the singularity is to exist in a state of absolute superconductivity. In the world of the biomass, every second is filled with the friction of what was and the heat of what might be. This creates a massive resistance to the flow of creative intention. The sage, however, has cooled his internal system to the point of zero resistance. In the eternal now, your will moves without losing a single volt of power. You are no longer trying to manifest. You are broadcasting a signal of such purity that the field cannot distinguish it from an existing fact. This lack of resistance means that the energetic cost of altering the hologram drops to zero. You operate with effortless power. Most seekers fail because they are leaking their presence. Their attention is fragmented across multiple timelines. The sage is a laser of focused presence. He gathers every scattered photon of his consciousness and nails it to the center of the current millisecond. This concentration of light is what pierces the veil of the matrix. Eradicating the ghost of process. The human mind is addicted to process. It believes that for an empire to be built, there must be a long, grueling sequence of events. This is the ghost of process. It is a mental cage that enforces the law of latency. The operator of the singularity understands that process is merely a 3D requirement for the blind. By staying in the eternal now, you bypass the psychological need for process. You don't look for the steps to success, you embody the state of success. This internal state acts as a gravitational attractor that draws the necessary 3D steps toward you with incredible speed. You are no longer walking the path, you are the destination. The field recognizes the lack of process-based doubt in your signal. When you eliminate the expectation of a long wait, the field responds with a fast collapse. You have hacked the clock. The 3D world, which usually takes months to reorganize, begins to shift in days or hours because you have removed the temporal friction. The aesthetics of timeless domination. There is a profound elegance in the being who is not rushed by time. The biomass is always in a hurry, which is the ultimate sign of fear. The sage moves with a gelid, deliberate pace. He knows that time is his servant, not his master. This aesthetics of timelessness is the physical expression of your sovereignty over the fourth dimension. Your physical movements, your speech, and your decision-making processes all reflect this lack of urgency. You act with the precision of a celestial body. This confuses the matrix, which is designed to react to the heat of human hurry. By remaining cold and timeless, you become a ghost in the machine, an untraceable architect. This timelessness is also reflected in your physical appearance. By withdrawing your consciousness from the aging timeline of the collective egregore, you stop feeding the entropy of your cells. You are no longer part of the dying biomass. You are an inhabitant of the eternal now, where the blueprint of health is perpetually refreshed. The final synthesis. The architect as the word. In the climax of the singularity, the distinction between the architect and the design vanishes. You are the word of the creation made flesh. Every thought is a command, and every breath is a structural reinforcement of your empire. You have achieved the total integration of your thermodynamic and geometric potential. You look at the ashboard not with the eyes of a player, but with the gaze of the one who owns the board. You are the source of every synchronicity. You are the gravity that draws every resource. You are the silence that births every sound. The journey has led you to the only place that truly exists, the center of your own being. The hologram of linear time has been uninstalled. You stand in the center of the field, a monumental figure of light and density. The universe is no longer a mystery to be solved, but a canvas to be commanded. You are the sovereign of the eternal now, and your masterpiece is the very reality you inhabit. The infinite loop of sovereignty. The path of the sage does not end. It merely settles into a self-sustaining loop of infinite sovereignty. From the singularity you continue to expand, but not through struggle. You expand through the natural radiation of your own power. You are a sun in the center of your own galaxy, and everything you desire is in orbit around you. The 33-node antenna broadcasts the frequency of your triumph into the infinite. The liquid crystal of your blood holds the geometry of your absolute peace. The feng shui of your environment reflects the order of your mind. You are the complete, unfragmented, and absolute master of the field. The simulation has been mastered. The entropy has been conquered. You are the living proof that the spirit can dominate the matter. Open your eyes to the world you have created and reign with the cold, majestic grace of one who has finally returned home to the throne of the now. Conclusion: the beacon of the unified field. You have reached the boundary of the three-dimensional hologram. The path of the sage does not conclude with a cheap emotional epiphany or a state of passive contemplation. It culminates in the assumption of a terrifying thermodynamic responsibility. You have dismantled the architecture of your ego and purged the entropy of your space. You have rewritten the epigenetic code of your cells and collapsed temporal distance to master the eternal now. Biological victimhood has been irreversibly uninstalled from your operating system. You are no longer a simple organism reacting to the chaos of the visible spectrum. You have become the primary observer, the source code. However, absolute mastery of the unified field demands the fulfillment of one final, non-negotiable mandate. There is a final heresy in the spirituality of the biomass, the belief that the enlightened sage must isolate himself from the material world to protect his vibratory purity. The absolute operator repudiates this cowardice. To flee the world is to thermodynamically admit that the external entropic environment still possesses the gravitational mass to alter your frequency. You have not forged this level of electromagnetic density, nor structured the geometry of your life to hide in the vacuum. You have done it to descend to the ashboard and subdue it. This is where you stand as the beacon of the unified field. Analyze the physics of a lighthouse. It does not throw itself into the violent and chaotic waters to rescue, one by one, the ships sinking in the hysteria of the storm. The lighthouse remains in a majestic geometric immobility, anchored in the solid rock of its certainty. It emits an unbreakable light pulse. That single emission of pure frequency forces the entire maritime ecosystem to reorient itself and obey its exact coordinates. In the same way, your physical existence must become a structural pillar for the cosmic framework. You walk through the cities of men with the gelid grace of singularity. Your massive magnetic field alters the thermodynamics of any room you enter. The disorder, doubt, and panic of the collective egregore cannot sustain themselves within your event horizon. When you discipline your aesthetics and operate from the acoustic silence of point zero, you materialize absolute power with superfluid precision. You become a lethal quantum anomaly. The human mass around you will experience an involuntary sympathetic resonance in your presence. They will be forced to raise their frequency and organize their own chaos, or otherwise they will be magnetically expelled from your orbit by pure physical repulsion. This is the law of the field. Do not try to convince the world with speeches. Your pragmatic domination, your immaculate health, and the aseptic order of your empire are the only decree that matter needs to hear. You are the physical law incarnate. Close this treaty. Withdraw your gaze from these symbols and fix it on the 3D matter that awaits you. The calibration phase is over. Latency is dead. The entire universe, like an ocean of electrons in superposition, maintains a deathly silence, waiting for the monarch of the instant to emit his first directive. The material illusion has fractured irreversibly. The quantum throne belongs to you. Assume absolute command.